People passed him every day, pretending not to see him. He never asked for coins, only for a piece of bread. Some judged him. Some ignored him. No one asked why, but one cold evening, everything changed, and the truth that came out left everyone speechless. The city was alive with noise, lights and busy footsteps, but for Armin, it was just another day of hunger. He sat near the corner of a bakery, his clothes worn, his hands rough, and his eyes sunken from sleepless nights. People often assumed he was asking for money to waste, but Armin never held a cup or a cardboard sign. Instead, he simply sat quietly with tired eyes, waiting for someone to drop a leftover sandwich or a piece of bread. Years ago, Armin had a life like everyone else. He worked as a mechanic in a small workshop, made enough to live modestly, and even dreamed of opening his own place someday. But life has a way of collapsing without warning. One accident changed everything. A heavy engine part slipped while he was working and crushed his hand, leaving him unable to work. The owner of the shop hired someone else. Soon after, rent piled up and he lost his home. With no family in the city and no savings to fall back on, the streets became his roof. The worst part wasn't the cold winters or the empty stomach. It was the way people looked at him. Their eyes said more than their words ever could. He must have done something wrong. He's lazy. He wants easy money. But Armin never begged for coins. Each morning, he would quietly ask, "Do you have something to eat?" Some ignored him. Others frowned as if he had insulted them. One afternoon, a little boy dropped half a sandwich next to him, and Armin thanked him as though he had given him the world. The boy's mother quickly pulled him away, whispering, "Don't touch people like that." Armin heard it, but he didn't blame her. Judgment was easier than understanding. At night, he slept behind an abandoned shop, covering himself with an old blanket someone had thrown in the trash. He often woke up from hunger before dawn and waited for the first bakery to open, not to buy, but to breathe in the smell of fresh bread. Breakfast for him was sometimes the crusts thrown in the garbage. Still, he never stole. He never raised his voice. He never begged for coins. But there was one place he always looked at with quiet hope: the bakery across the street. Every morning, people lined up for warm bread, sweet buns, and hot tea. Armin sat on the opposite sidewalk, watching, hoping someone would ask, "Are you hungry?" They never did. Still, he waited. With each passing day, he held on to a fragile thread of hope. Maybe someone would see him not as a beggar, but as a hungry human being. One particularly cold morning, the wind cut through Armin's thin shirt like a blade. His stomach had been empty for more than a day, and every step he took felt heavier than the last. He walked slowly to his usual spot near the bakery. The sky was gray, and the city seemed quieter than usual. As he sat down, people began to walk past him like shadows. Some glanced at him with annoyance, others pretended he wasn't there at all. A woman dropped a coin near his feet, without even looking at him, as if she was discarding something unwanted. He picked it up gently and placed it on the windowsill nearby. He didn't want money. He wanted food. A group of teenagers passed by, laughing loudly. One of them looked at Armin and smirked. "Hey, old man, want a burger?" he asked mockingly, holding up an empty wrapper. His friends burst into laughter. Armin stayed silent. He had learned long ago that responding only made things worse. They walked away, still laughing, leaving a sharp ache in his chest that had nothing to do with hunger. Around noon, the smell of fresh bread filled the air. Armin gathered his courage and approached a man who had just bought a bag of rolls. "Excuse me," Armin said softly. "I don't need money, just... If you have a piece of food, I will be grateful." The man looked at him with visible disgust. "Why don't you get a job instead of bothering people?" he snapped. Before Armin could say anything, the man walked away, shaking his head as if he had been inconvenienced. A few moments later, Armin spotted a small boy holding a croissant. The boy stared at him curiously. Armin managed a faint smile. But before he could speak, the child's father quickly pulled him behind him. "Don't talk to strangers," he warned, eyeing Armin coldly. They hurried away as if he were some kind of danger. The day dragged on and the ache in his stomach became unbearable. He felt dizzy, his vision blurred, and his hands trembled from weakness. He leaned back against the wall and closed his eyes, trying to push away the pain. Voices faded in and out around him. A few people tossed coins near him, assuming that's what he wanted. One woman covered her nose as she passed, and another man muttered, "These people should be removed from the streets." The bakery employees had seen him many times but never spoke to him. They often swept the sidewalk near him, pushing crumbs away instead of offering them. By evening, the sky turned dark, and hunger gnawed at him like never before. His body felt light, his heart heavy. He began to wonder if anyone in the world even cared if he lived another day. For the first time in many years, Armin lowered his head and whispered to himself, "Maybe this is how it ends." Not with anger, not with noise, just silence and hunger. As the last rays of sunlight faded, a young woman named Sarah stepped out of the bakery. She worked there as a helper, cleaning tables and packaging bread. She had seen Armin many times before, sitting quietly, never begging loudly like others. Something about his silence had always stayed in her mind. That evening, as she locked the shop door, she noticed him again. He was leaning against the wall, eyes closed, breathing slowly. For a moment, she thought he had fallen asleep, but then she saw him shiver. Without thinking twice, Sarah walked back inside the bakery. The owner was still there, counting the day's earnings. "Sir," she said softly, "may I take the leftover bread from today?" He looked at her suspiciously. "Why?" "We usually throw it away. There's a man outside," she said. "He's not asking for money. He just looks hungry," the owner sighed. "Fine, take it. Just make sure no one sees and starts expecting free food." Sarah gathered a few pieces of bread, a small pastry, and poured tea into a disposable cup. She stepped outside and walked toward Armin. He didn't notice her at first. "Sir," she said gently. His eyes opened slowly, confused. She knelt beside him and held out the food. "Here, please eat." For a moment, he just stared. His eyes filled with disbelief, then with tears. "I didn't ask for money," he whispered. "I know," she replied softly. "That's why I brought food." His hands trembled as he reached for the bread. He held it as if it were something sacred. He took a small bite, then another, tears slipping down his cheeks without sound. Sarah sat beside him quietly, not out of pity, but respect. "What is your name?" she asked. "Armin," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. She nodded. "I'm Sarah. If you sit here tomorrow, I'll bring you breakfast before my shift." He looked at her, unsure if he had heard correctly. "Why?" he asked. She smiled gently. "Because no one should go hungry while others walk past with full bags." The next morning, Sarah kept her promise. She brought him tea and warm bread before opening the bakery. The owner noticed but said nothing. Customers saw her talking to Armin, and slowly their judgment began to fade. One afternoon, the bakery owner came outside and asked Armin about his past. When he learned that Armin was once a mechanic, he spoke to a friend who owned a repair shop. Within a week, Armin had small tasks to do, nothing heavy but enough to earn some money. Weeks passed, and Armin's life shifted. He still slept in a shelter, but he was saving now. He was eating daily. He was speaking again, all because one person saw him not as a beggar, but as a human being. Kindness doesn't always need money. Sometimes it only takes a meal, a word, or a moment of care. One act of compassion can rewrite someone's entire story. The world doesn't change when you help everyone. It changes when you help someone,